Japan, the land of the rising sun, a place where ancient traditions seamlessly blend with cutting-edge technology and breathtaking natural beauty, is rivaled only by its bustling cities. It's a destination that captivates millions of tourists each year, drawing them into its rich tapestry of culture and innovation. Yet this global allure is a relatively new chapter in Japan's story. For more than 200 years, from the 17th to the 19th centuries, Japan stood resolutely apart from the world, its borders sealed tight against all outsiders. This era, known as Sakoku, was a time of profound transformation within the island nation. During this period of enforced isolation, Japanese culture blossomed like never before, the economy surged, and society evolved in ways that would shape the nation's future. The echoes of this era can still be felt today in the cultural treasures that continue to define Japan. But how did Japan, once so secluded, emerge from this era of isolation to become one of the most advanced and open nations on the planet? This is the story of Japan's remarkable journey. For nearly 40,000 years, the seeds of Japan's remarkable history were sown by the first human settlers who journeyed from mainland Asia. These early pioneers brought with them the essential skills of agriculture and metalworking, laying the foundation for the formation of permanent communities and the rise of the earliest Japanese kingdoms. By the 3rd century AD, the scattered tribes of southern Japan had begun to unite under a centralized power, with the Yamato region emerging as the heart of this new order. At its head was a monarch known as the Emperor, a figure who would come to symbolize the continuity and authority of the Japanese state. Japan's early history was deeply influenced by cultural currents from beyond its shores. In 552, Buddhism was introduced from Korea, setting off a profound transformation that would touch every corner of Japanese life. Then, in 645, the Taika reforms swept through the nation, reshaping its political landscape to reflect the Chinese model of governance, with an imperial court at its center. This imperial court, however, was initially a nomadic institution, moving with each new emperor. That changed in 794 when Emperor Kanmu made a monumental decision to establish a permanent capital in what is now modern-day Kyoto. This marked the beginning of the Heian period, a golden era of Japanese culture and governance that would endure for nearly 400 years. As the centuries passed, the imperial court, once the heart of Japan's power, became entangled in its own grandeur and internal politics. The affairs of the state beyond the capital were neglected, and the authority of the emperor began to wane. In this power vacuum, local noble elites started to seize control, giving rise to a feudal system where power was fragmented and no longer centered in Kyoto. The emperor's grip on the land weakened, and powerful regional warrior clans, such as the Taira and Minamoto, began to rise. With their ranks bolstered by formidable samurai warriors, these clans became a force to be reckoned with, ultimately challenging the emperor's dominance. The tensions culminated in the Heiji Rebellion of 1160, ignited by a fierce dispute over the imperial succession. This clash of ambitions spiraled into the Genpei War, a brutal conflict that raged from 1180 to 1185. In the end, it was the Minamoto clan, led by the resolute Yoritomo, that emerged victorious. Yoritomo's triumph marked a turning point in Japanese history. He established a new military government, the shogunate in the city of Kamakura, far removed from the imperial court in Kyoto. This shift signaled the beginning of a new era, where the true power of Japan no longer resided with the emperor, but with the shogun. Yoritomo's ambitions reached new heights in 1192 when he persuaded Emperor Go-Toba to bestow upon him the title of shogun, or great general. With this title, Yoritomo became the de facto ruler of Japan, ushering in an era of military governance known as the shogunate, a period that would dominate Japanese history for the next 700 years. But the shogunate's strength was soon tested by a formidable foe. At the dawn of the 13th century, the Mongol Empire, one of the largest and most powerful in history, set its sights on Japan. In 1265, Kublai Khan, the Mongol ruler, demanded Japan's submission as a vassal state. When his demand was met with silence, Kublai Khan began preparations for a full-scale invasion. In 1274, Mongol forces landed on the island of Kyushu, where they faced a fiercely determined, though vastly outnumbered, army of samurai. Just as the battle seemed dire for the Japanese defenders, fate intervened. A powerful typhoon, later revered as the kamikaze or divine wind, swept across the region, decimating the Mongol fleet and saving Japan from conquest. Undeterred, the Mongols attempted a second invasion in 1281. Astonishingly, history repeated itself. As their forces advanced, another devastating typhoon struck, obliterating the Mongol fleet and securing Japan's independence once more. Though Japan had successfully repelled the Mongol invasions, the cost of defense had nearly drained the shogunate's treasury. As a result, many samurai who had fought valiantly were left unpaid. This financial strain bred deep resentment between the samurai clans and the military government. By 1333, this discontent set the stage for a dramatic power struggle. Emperor Go-Daigo, seeking to reclaim authority for the imperial court in Kyoto, launched a bold coup. His efforts were initially successful, and for a brief moment, the emperor restored his hold on power. However, this victory was short-lived. Just 5 years later, in 1338, Go-Daigo was overthrown in yet another coup, this time by Ashikaga Takauji, who reinstated the shogunate's rule. Yet even with the shogun back in power, the true control of Japan remained fractured. Real authority lay with the regional samurai clans, whose lords, known as daimyos, held sway over the land, governing their territories with an iron grip. The powerful samurai clans, always scheming for greater influence, frequently forged alliances and plotted against one another, constantly shifting the balance of power across Japan. These maneuvers often erupted into violent civil wars, the most devastating of which began in 1467, the Onin War. This conflict, sparked by a dispute over the succession of Shogun Ashikaga Yoshimasa, saw the daimyos take sides, effectively shattering the fragile unity of the feudal system. As the daimyos vied for control, Japan fractured into a patchwork of independent states, each ruled by its own warlord. This era of relentless strife, known as the Warring States or Sengoku period, plunged the country into chaos well into the 16th century. It was a time of intense military innovation, with the rise of ninjas who specialized in covert assassinations and espionage, and the deployment of Buddhist warrior monks, the Soi, on the battlefield. Amidst this turmoil, a turning point came in 1543 when a Portuguese trading ship, blown off course, landed on the island of Tanegashima, just south of Kyushu. The 3 Portuguese traders who disembarked were the first Europeans to set foot in Japan. Their arrival marked the beginning of a new era, as they quickly established trade relations, linking Japan to the vast Portuguese trading network that spanned much of the Indo-Pacific region. Every year, a Portuguese vessel, ominously dubbed the Black Ship by the Japanese, would appear on the horizon, anchoring off the coast to trade. Among the most coveted goods it brought were European muskets, an entirely new and revolutionary weapon for Japan. These firearms quickly captured the attention of the feuding daimyos, each eager to gain a tactical edge in the relentless civil wars that gripped the country. By 1556, the impact of these weapons was undeniable. Over 300,000 firearms were in use across the battlefields of Japan, transforming the nature of warfare. The Portuguese influence extended beyond trade, as they also introduced Christianity to Japan. This new faith became intertwined with commerce, as Japanese converts often received preferential access to firearms and, in some cases, even direct military support from the Portuguese. One daimyo who strategically aligned with the Portuguese was Oda Nobunaga. Although he never embraced Christianity himself, Nobunaga recognized the power of European gunpowder weapons. Utilizing this newfound technological superiority, he embarked on a campaign to unify Japan, emerging as a dominant force in the war-torn land. In the final stretch of his quest for dominance in 1582, Oda Nobunaga met a tragic end, ambushed and killed by a treacherous rival. Yet his vision did not die with him. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, a man of humble peasant origins who had risen through the ranks to become a formidable samurai daimyo, swiftly took up the mantle. With relentless determination, Hideyoshi completed Nobunaga's mission, finally uniting the fractured lands of Japan under a single rule. However, despite holding the reins of power, Hideyoshi never assumed the title of shogun, perhaps because of his lowly origins. Instead, he ruled as Kampaku, the imperial regent, and Daijin, chancellor of the realm. His intention was to pass these prestigious titles to his young son, Toyotomi Hideyori. But with Hideyori still just a child, Hideyoshi entrusted his 5 most loyal generals with a solemn pledge to protect his son's claim until he was old enough to rule. But peace was fleeting. Upon Hideyoshi's death in 1598, Japan was once again plunged into civil war. The country was divided between those who supported Hideyori and those who sided with Tokugawa Ieyasu, a once loyal follower of Hideyoshi, now vying for power himself. The stage was set for yet another fierce struggle for control over Japan. The turning point arrived in 1600 at the Battle of Sekigahara, where Tokugawa Ieyasu emerged victorious over his rivals, marking the dawn of a new era under the Tokugawa shogunate. This regime would preside over Japan for an uninterrupted 268 years, defining what would become known as the Edo period, named after the shogunate's new seat of power in Edo, modern-day Tokyo. The Edo period is perhaps the most pivotal chapter in Japanese history. Under the Tokugawa shogunate, Japan enjoyed an era of relative peace and stability, allowing its culture, arts, and economy to thrive in unprecedented prosperity. However, this peace came at a price. The Tokugawa rulers implemented strict measures to suppress any potential unrest, including a brutal crackdown on the spread of Christianity, which was ultimately banned entirely in 1638. To further insulate Japan from foreign influence, the third shogun, Tokugawa Iemitsu, enacted the policy of Sakoku in 1639. This isolationist policy effectively sealed Japan's borders, forbidding contact with the outside world and prohibiting Japanese citizens from traveling abroad or returning from overseas. It was a drastic measure that would keep Japan secluded from the rest of the world for over 2 centuries. Under Tokugawa rule, Japan maintained a tight grip on foreign interactions. Trade was restricted to neighboring China and Korea, and the Dutch, the only Europeans allowed to trade, were confined to the isolated island of Dejima in Nagasaki. Despite these restrictions, Japan thrived throughout the 17th century. The Tokugawa shogunates presided over a time of remarkable prosperity, with the population soaring to 30 million. The government invested heavily in infrastructure, constructing roads and schools that boosted the nation's socio-economic development. Yet, by the late 1700s and early 1800s, the once unbreakable Tokugawa shogunate began to show signs of strain. The agricultural boom that had fueled the early Edo period slowed to a standstill, and the government's response to the severe famines of the 1830s proved woefully inadequate. Amid these troubles, Western ideas began to seep into Japan. Dutch books detailing the latest European scientific advancements were translated into Japanese and circulated from Dejima, subtly influencing Japanese thought and laying the groundwork for future change. Japan's long era of isolation came crashing down in 1853 when Commodore Matthew Perry, commanding a fleet of American warships, sailed into Edo Bay. The United States, determined to force Japan's ports open to international trade, made it clear that it was willing to use military might to achieve its objectives. Unable to withstand the overwhelming firepower of the American fleet, the Tokugawa shogunate had no choice but to capitulate. They agreed to Perry's demands, opening Japan to American commercial interests. This concession soon extended to other Western powers, including Britain and Russia, deepening Japan's entanglement with foreign nations. The shogunate's surrender ignited fierce resentment, especially among the southern provinces of Choshu and Satsuma. United in their frustration, these factions formed a powerful alliance and in 1868 persuaded the young Emperor Meiji to issue a decree to abolish the Tokugawa shogunate. The armies of Choshu and Satsuma then advanced on Edo, leading to the Boshin War, a conflict that would seal the fate of the shogunate. With the shogunate's downfall, Emperor Meiji restored imperial rule, ushering in a new era of governance and setting the stage for Japan's dramatic transformation. In 1869, a historic transformation began as the imperial court moved to Edo, renaming it Tokyo and marking the dawn of the Meiji Restoration. This pivotal moment set Japan on a bold path toward modernization, with the ambitious goal of emerging as a fully fledged nation-state rivaling the Western powers. The Meiji government wasted no time in overhauling the nation's infrastructure. Railways and telegraph lines sprouted across the country, a universal education system was established, and the once banned Christianity was openly practiced. Japan sought to modernize at an unprecedented pace. To fuel this transformation, the government enlisted hundreds of advisors from Western nations, tapping into their expertise in mining, banking, law, and transportation to propel Japan forward. Among the most significant changes was the overhaul of the military. Embracing the latest Western tactics and technologies, Japan's armed forces were revamped to meet modern demands. In 1877, this newly modernized army was put to the ultimate test during the Satsuma Rebellion. This conflict erupted as disgruntled samurai from Satsuma, whose traditional roles were eclipsed by the rise of a contemporary standing army, rose up in revolt. The updated military was deployed to suppress the rebellion, showcasing Japan's rapid evolution and its commitment to its newfound strength. Japan's newfound military prowess quickly became a tool for expanding its influence beyond its shores, aiming to mirror the colonial empires of the Western powers. After consolidating control over Hokkaido and annexing the Tokyo Islands, Japan set its sights on China and Korea. The First Sino-Japanese War, 1894 to 1895, showcased Japan's military might. With an unwavering resolve and strategic brilliance, Japan's forces delivered a crushing defeat to the much larger Qing army, securing Taiwan as a prize for their victory. In 1902, Japan forged a pivotal military alliance with Britain to counter the growing regional threats. This alliance was tested in the clash with Russia, culminating in the historic Battle of the Yalu River, where Japan emerged victorious against a Western power for the first time in decades. The Russo-Japanese War, 1904 to 1905, reached its climax with the dramatic Battle of Tsushima. Here, Japan's modernized navy decisively defeated the Russian fleet, demonstrating its formidable naval capabilities. These triumphs enabled Japan to extend its dominance further, culminating in the annexation of Korea in 1910. By doing so, Japan established itself not merely as a regional power, but as a dominant force on the global stage. Fueled by its recent military successes and driven by ambitions to extend its reach across the Asia-Pacific, Japan aligned itself with the Allies in World War I. The goal was clear: seize new territories in the South Pacific, regions under nominal German control. With the war's end, Japan emerged from the Treaty of Versailles with enhanced international prestige and strengthened ties through its membership in the League of Nations. However, beneath this veneer of diplomatic success, a rising tide of nationalism and fascism began to surge, particularly within the military. This growing fervor for expansionism soon began to manifest in more aggressive policies. In 1937, these ambitions ignited the Second Sino-Japanese War, marking a new chapter of territorial aggression on the Chinese mainland. Japan's increasing boldness heightened international apprehension and suspicion about its intentions, setting the stage for escalating tensions across the region. Disturbed by Japan's aggressive expansion and growing ambitions, the United States imposed severe economic sanctions aimed at curbing its war efforts. As World War II erupted in 1939, Japan recognized the need to realign itself with like-minded powers to further its expansionist goals. Thus, in 1940, Japan formed a strategic alliance with Germany and Italy, deepening its estrangement from the US and aggravating tensions with other Western nations. Japan's aggressive moves did not stop there. By extending its reach into Southeast Asia and infringing upon European colonial territories, Japan further alienated Britain, the Netherlands, and France. Under the leadership of Prime Minister and General Hideki Tojo, Japan faced a stark choice: to preemptively strike against the United States in order to lift the crippling economic sanctions and solidify its territorial gains in the Pacific. This decision set the stage for a dramatic and fateful confrontation that would reshape the course of history. On December 7, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy unleashed a shocking surprise attack on the American fleet at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. This brazen assault ignited the United States' entry into World War II, aligning it with the Allies and marking the beginning of a relentless military campaign against Japan. By this time, Japan had already expanded its control across Asia, conquering the Philippines, Malaya, Hong Kong, Singapore, Burma, and the Dutch East Indies. The Allies, led by the United States, waged a fierce and grueling conflict across the Pacific. A critical strategy was to seize small islands with strategically crucial airfields, which would serve as launch pads for bombing raids aimed at the Japanese mainland. Despite these efforts, the costly and slow progress of the campaign made it clear that a full-scale ground invasion of Japan would result in staggering losses. Faced with this grim reality, the United States turned to a newly developed and top-secret weapon to force Japan's surrender and bring the war to a decisive end. On August 6 and 9, 1945, the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, resulting in the death of over 100,000 people in a flash of devastating power. Japan's surrender was formally communicated to the Allies on August 14 and publicly announced by Emperor Hirohito via national radio the following day. With the end of the war, Japan came under the occupation of Allied forces led by General Douglas MacArthur, who spearheaded a sweeping reconstruction effort. The Japanese military was disbanded, and the nation embarked on a process of democratization. Emperor Hirohito was permitted to remain on the throne, but was compelled to renounce his divine status, a cornerstone of the state Shinto religion. Under Prime Minister Shigeru Yoshida's leadership, Japan redirected its focus from aggressive foreign policies to economic development, setting the stage for a remarkable transformation into a global economic powerhouse. By 1955, Japan's economy had not only recovered but surpassed its pre-war heights, and by 1968, it had ascended to become the world's second-largest capitalist economy. In the ensuing decades, Japan emerged as a powerhouse in automobile manufacturing and a formidable force in the electronics industry, sparking an economic boom driven by high-quality, Japanese-made consumer goods. This remarkable post-war resurgence transformed Japan into a global leader, achieving top rankings in economic output, technological innovation, and even life expectancy. This extraordinary success is a testament to the relentless work ethic and indomitable spirit of the Japanese people. After enduring the ravages of the most devastating conflict in history, they chose to forge a new path, dedicating themselves to rebuilding a modern, thriving nation free from the strife and inequalities of the past. Like and subscribe for more, and share your thoughts with us in the comment section.